Most mornings don't announce themselves as important. They just arrive, ordinary, unremarkable, indistinguishable from the morning before or the one after. On the morning of September 30th, 1955, James Dean woke up the way he often did, early, restless, eager to be on the road. He had a car he loved, a new silver Porsche, and a drive ahead of him to a race in Salinas, California. It was, by every account, an ordinary morning. He had breakfast. He talked with friends about the drive ahead, about the car, about small, practical things. What time they'd leave, what route they'd take, who would ride with whom. Nothing about that morning felt significant. It was the kind of morning that, on any other day, would have been forgotten by lunchtime. Of course, we know now what no one in that morning could have known. That this ordinary morning, this unremarkable string of small decisions, breakfast, conversations, a drive to a gas station, was in fact one of the last mornings of a life that would become legendary. This isn't a story meant to dwell on what happened later that day. It's a story about the morning itself, about how completely ordinary it was and how impossible it would have been for anyone living through it to know what we know now, looking back. There's something both unsettling and quietly profound about that. Unsettling because it reminds us how little control any of us really have over how much time we have. But profound, too, because it reminds us of something we rarely think about, that every single one of our mornings carries that same invisible weight. We simply never know which ones they are. To understand why this particular morning has stayed with people for so long, it helps to remember who James Dean was at that moment in his life. He was 24. He had just finished filming what would become one of his most remembered roles, and he was, by most accounts, at the very beginning of something. Not the end of anything. He had plans, ideas for future films, a growing interest in racing which felt to him like a kind of freedom, speed, open road, nothing to perform for, no cameras, no expectations. That morning, packing the car, checking the route, he was doing what any 24-year-old with a new car and a free weekend might do. Thinking about the drive. Thinking about the race. Thinking probably about what he might do that evening, or the next day, or the week after that, the way young people tend to think with the casual assumption that there will always be a next week, a next month, a next year, stretching out comfortably ahead. That assumption is so quiet, so automatic, that most of us never even notice we're making it. We plan dinners for next month. We put off conversations until next time we visit. We assume, without ever really deciding to, that there will be a next time. Usually there is. That's worth saying clearly, because this isn't a story meant to frighten anyone or to suggest that every morning is secretly dangerous. Most ordinary mornings are followed by ordinary afternoons and ordinary evenings and many more mornings after that. But not always, and we never know in advance which mornings are the exception. Friends who spent time with James Dean that morning didn't describe anything unusual. He was, by most accounts, in good spirits, excited about the race, proud of his new car, looking forward to the drive. He joked around. He was, in other words, simply living his life the way any of us do on any given morning, without ceremony, without significance, without any sense that this particular morning was different from 1,000 others. That's the realization worth sitting with. Not a dramatic one, a quiet one. That ordinary mornings are never actually ordinary. They only look that way from the inside while we're living them. From the outside, from the vantage point of looking back years later, every morning was actually full of small, irreplaceable things. Maybe you've felt that too. Maybe you've thought about a person who's no longer here, a parent, a spouse, an old friend, and remembered an ordinary morning you once spent with them. A breakfast, a car ride, a conversation about nothing in particular. At the time, it was just another morning. Now, looking back, it's something you'd give almost anything to have back, even for just a few more minutes. And maybe that's made you think about your own mornings now. The ordinary ones. The ones with the people who are still here. A spouse across the breakfast table. A phone call with a grown child. A quiet cup of coffee on the porch. Mornings that, right now, feel completely unremarkable. Here's something gentle to consider. You don't have to live as though every morning might be your last. That kind of thinking is heavy and exhausting, and not really sustainable or even healthy. But you can, every so often, let yourself notice an ordinary morning while you're in it. Not because something is wrong, just because it's there. What does that look like? Practically, it might be as simple as this. Tomorrow morning, when you're having your coffee, or sitting with your spouse, or talking on the phone with someone you love, pause just for a moment. Notice the light in the room. Notice the sound of their voice. Notice that this moment, ordinary as it feels, is actually happening. That it's real, and that it's yours, right now. James Dean's last morning was full of small, ordinary things. A car, a breakfast, friends, plans for the day. None of those things were extraordinary in themselves, but looking back, every one of them became part of something people still think about decades later. Not because the morning was special, but because it was real, and it was his, and it was the last one. We don't get to know which of our mornings are the last of anything. The last ordinary breakfast with someone, the last ordinary phone call, the last ordinary drive somewhere together. Most of the time, we won't know until much later that a particular morning mattered at all. But that's exactly why it's worth noticing them now. Not with anxiety, but with a kind of quiet appreciation. Because the alternative, not noticing any of them, letting them all blur together into one long, unremarkable stretch of time, means missing almost everything while it's happening. Maybe it's time to treat tomorrow morning a little differently. Not dramatically, just slightly. A few extra seconds at the breakfast table. A phone call that lasts a little longer than it needs to. A good morning that's said slowly and meant. It's never too late to start noticing ordinary mornings, even if you've let thousands of them pass by without much thought. And all of us have. The next one is still ahead of you, waiting, exactly as ordinary and exactly as full of small, real things as all the others. And there's another side to this too, worth sitting with gently. Maybe it's not your own mornings you're thinking about right now. Maybe it's someone else's, a parent who's getting older, a spouse whose health has changed, a friend you've been meaning to visit, but life keeps getting in the way. If that's the case, here's something worth considering. You don't need a special occasion to spend an ordinary morning with someone. In fact, ordinary mornings might be exactly what's most valuable, more valuable in some ways than the big holidays and milestone celebrations, which often come with their own pressure to be meaningful. An ordinary Tuesday morning with nothing planned can sometimes hold more real connection than an entire holiday weekend. Maybe it's time to plan one. Not a big visit, not a special occasion, just an ordinary morning, coffee, maybe breakfast, no agenda. The kind of morning that years from now might be one you think back on with real tenderness, precisely because nothing about it was trying to be memorable. There's a strange comfort in this, too, if you sit with it long enough. James Dean's last morning wasn't sad. It wasn't full of dread or unfinished business or things left unsaid. It was, by every account, a good morning. Friends, a car he loved, a plan for the day, ordinary conversation. In its own way, that's a gentle thing to know, that an ordinary, happy morning can be enough, that it doesn't need to be dramatic or significant to matter. Maybe that's the quiet gift in this story. Not a warning to live in fear of time running out, but a reminder that the ordinary mornings, the ones with coffee and conversation and small plans for an unremarkable day, are not lesser than the big moments. They're not a placeholder, waiting for something more important to happen. They are themselves what a life is mostly made of. If you're watching this tonight, maybe there's someone whose ordinary mornings you'd like to be part of again. Not for any special reason, just because the mornings themselves, it turns out, are the thing. James Dean was 24 years old on that last ordinary morning. He had no way of knowing what the day would hold, and neither did anyone around him. All any of them had was the morning itself. Breakfast, conversation, plans, an ordinary day beginning the way ordinary days do. If you're watching this, tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, is worth a little more attention than usual. Not because anything is wrong, just because it's there, and it's yours, and it won't come again in quite the same way. So take a slow breath, and maybe tomorrow morning, let yourself notice it, just for a moment, before the day carries you along the way days do.